I hope everyone enjoyed the catered shrimp. Patricia smiled into the microphone, her voice sticky with smugness as she lifted a champagne flute to a sea of folding chairs. Her rhinestone sash glittered under twinkling stage lights, and the HOA elite beamed back at her, basking in their self-importance. Then, right on cue, the lights blinked once, twice before every speaker popped like firecrackers. The music died. The projector gave one last buzz and fizzled. The champagne fountain coughed, whined, and collapsed into silence. Within seconds, the grand HOA board meeting plunged into complete darkness just as Patricia opened her mouth to read the motion to seize my land. Someone screamed. Another groaned. One poor guy tripped over the riser and landed face first in a tray of deviled eggs. I stood at the edge of the field behind my split-rail fence, holding a remote in one hand and a thermos of tea in the other, and whispered to myself, "Game on. But to understand how we got here, you need to rewindow the very first white line." It all started on a Thursday, a particularly annoying Thursday. I just returned from a 4-day engineering summit in Denver, looking forward to some quiet time on my rural property, only to find my east field completely covered in white-painted parking lines. Sloppy, spray-can rectangles stretched across the grass like a suburban barcode. To make matters worse, laminated signs hung from wooden stakes hammered into the ground: HOA overflow parking, board member reserved. There was even an orange cone with a balloon tied to it, flapping in the breeze like some cruel joke. I stood there blinking, wondering if a circus had broken in and left behind their prep work. And then I saw her. Patricia Carmichael. HOA president, clipboard warrior, queen of overreach. She waddled over from the subdivision entrance, her neon tracksuit shimmering like a radioactive jelly bean. Her sunglasses were too big for her face. Her expression was one of preemptive justification. "Oh, hi," she called, voice honeyed and fake. "We didn't think you'd be back until next week." I said nothing. She kept going, undeterred. "The board voted to use the field temporarily," she chirped. "You weren't using it. We figured it could benefit the community. Let me be clear, my family's owned this land since 1972. That subdivision didn't exist until 2003. My property is outside the HOA boundary. Old rural zoning, livestock rights, independent utilities. Full control. They had no claim, no permission, not even a heads up." "Who painted the lines?" I asked. "My nephew," she said cheerily. "He runs a contracting thing. No permit. No license. Just a nephew and a paint can." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I've learned that anger only feeds her brand of bureaucratic arrogance. So I smiled, nodded, and said, "Got it." Then I walked straight to my garage and pulled out the folder. Every rural property owner with a suburban HOA next door should keep one. Mine included my deed, county zoning maps, utility rights, tax records, and most importantly, Cold War-era utility blueprints from when this area was used by the military. What they didn't realize is that their brand-new parking lot sat directly above a retire but still live electrical bypass grid. My grid. My switch. My domain. They were trespassing. And I had proof. For the next several days, I documented everything. Every car parked on my grass, every folding chair, every signpost and balloon arch, every time Patricia strutted across my field giving someone a tour. They were gearing up for some massive event, a re-election gala, I guessed, or some HOA award ceremony. The irony was so thick you could bottle it. I filmed Patricia waving her clipboard like a conductor while she directed a delivery truck onto my property. They even cracked my side fence while setting up a portable stage. No apologies. Just business as usual. By Saturday, it had become absurd. Someone installed a porta-potty next to my apple tree. Another HOA rep drove rebar into the roots to secure a canopy. And through it all, I said nothing. Because I had a plan. Not some petty revenge scheming, a precision strike. One that would cut them at their foundation. Their power. Literally. That night, I inspected the old military junction box at the base of the hill. It had been dormant for decades, but I'd restored parts of it for my own workshop, weather station, and irrigation systems. All legal. All isolated. And it gave me access to an override switch right beneath their pop-up gala. By Sunday, the field looked like a wedding reception for realtors. Patricia wore a glittery sash that read, "Madam President." Spotlights lit up the area. A DJ played slow jazz under a white tent. Neighbors in collared shirts toasted to unity and shared vision. I watched from my porch, one hand on the switch, and waited. When Patricia raised the microphone and said, "Let this board meeting commence," I flipped the breaker. Boom. Silence. It was beautiful. The kind of silence that makes people shift in their chairs. Uneasy. Suspicious. Their backup generator coughed, sputtered, and died with a dramatic puff of smoke. A popcorn machine sparked. A speaker cracked and hissed. Someone dropped a tray of shrimp. I leaned against my fence and sipped my tea. Patricia screamed. "Everyone remain calm. This is just a technical issue." She stormed toward the generator, yelling at the tech, who opened the panel and scratched his head. "Lines are fine," he said. "But there's no feed. Like someone rerouted the grid." Her face paled. The mask cracked. While she scrambled, I retrieved my folder again. This time I had photos. Timestamps. Even a blurry shot from my neighbor Earl of Patricia personally taping a sign to my fence that read, "HOA event parking enter here." My attorney was going to love that one. But this wasn't about lawsuits yet. It was about exposure. Patricia scanned the field, eyes wild, until she spotted me. I smiled and waved. She didn't return it. Whispers began among the seated guests. "Doesn't he own this land?" I thought this wasn't part of the HOA. Doubt spread like wildfire. By Monday morning, the HOA was in full panic. I watched from my porch with coffee and binoculars as they argued near the clubhouse. Patricia looked like she hadn't slept, her hair in disarray, her walk jittery. Board members Stuart and Melanie huddled under a tree, whispering intensely. I decided it was time to act. I printed satellite images showing the field as clearly marked private land. I added zoning maps, photos of damage, the sign, the fence, and a still of Patricia waving her clipboard as a truck rolled onto my grass. Then, I slid it all into a binder and dropped it in the HOA mailbox. With a sticky note, especially page 7. That afternoon, there was a knock. It was Stuart. He looked 5 years older than he had on Friday. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, leaned on my porch rail. "Only if we're being honest." He exhaled. "We didn't know it was your land." Patricia showed us a map from 2009. Said it was unclaimed. I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't check the deed? Didn't notice the private property sign next to the tree?" He looked down. "We screwed up." Then he added, "Some of us want her out." This was too much. That caught my attention. "Well," I said, "you might want to hurry. I've filed with zoning enforcement and have a meeting with the county clerk. If this isn't cleaned up by Friday, I'm pressing charges." He nodded and left. That night, I installed motion lights and posted a laminated sign, "Private land. Trespassing will be documented and prosecuted," with a QR code linking to the public property record. Patricia didn't show her face for 2 days. But the silence was telling. Then came the messages, anonymous notes, vague texts from unknown numbers. Most said things like, "We support you," or "We never agreed to this." One person even dropped off a pie with a sticky note, a peace offering from the sane half of the neighborhood. The next day, I visited the county clerk's office and handed over my full binder. Joyce, the clerk, flipped through it and muttered, "Lord, you've got them dead to rights." "I hope so," I said. "They built on top of your utility line?" she asked. "Yep. Documented. Violation." She shut the binder with a snap. "This is going to be fun." By Thursday, the tension was thick enough to chew. Word spread fast. Zoning inspection at 3 p.m. By 2:30, board members were frantically trying to erase the white paint, raking the field, moving signs. One guy tried to cover tire marks with mulch. I stood by my fence again, iced tea in hand, and watched them sweat. At 3:02, a white SUV pulled up. Lisa from zoning stepped out. "Aviators. Clipboard. No nonsense." She measured, photographed, logged everything. Then she approached me. "You the owner?" I handed her my binder. She flipped through it, let out a low whistle. "You weren't kidding." "Nope." She turned to the board. "You violated multiple zoning codes. Unpermitted use of private land. Unauthorized structures. You'll be receiving formal notices. And possibly criminal citations." Just then, Patricia showed up, in a wide-brimmed hat, new sunglasses, another clipboard. "I demand to speak to your supervisor," she barked. Lisa didn't even blink. You're not in a position to demand anything. This land was unclaimed, Patricia screeched, pointing at me. That man cut our power. He endangered everyone. I stepped forward. No, Patricia. I rerouted my own line on my own property. If your cousin wired into it illegally, that's on you. The crowd behind us had grown. Neighbors with phones out. Recording. Lisa folded her notes. You have no authority here. And your HOA boundaries end where his fence begins. Patricia's mouth opened. Closed. She turned red. Then tried again. You'll regret this, she shouted. I walked past her and said, next time, maybe knock. That night, the neighborhood exploded. Screenshots of Lisa's report circulated. A petition started. By morning, a flyer appeared on Patricia's door. Special board vote Saturday at noon. And when Saturday came, it felt like the Super Bowl. The field was empty again. Quiet. Just as it should be. At noon, chairs filled the clubhouse lawn. The board sat at a folding table. Patricia in the center, looking like she was attending her own execution. Stewart stood. We're here to vote on a motion to remove Patricia Carmichael as president of the HOA for misconduct and abuse of authority. There was no applause. Just a rumble of "is." Hands went up across the crowd. Patricia paled. You'll regret this, she hissed. Someone from the back muttered, we already do. I stepped forward. She looked at me, eyes hollow. I didn't gloat. Just said, don't paint on property. And that was the end of it. In the weeks that followed, the field was cleared, reseeded, and restored. The HOA reorganized. Patricia moved out. The new leadership prioritized transparency. Public votes. Boundaries. Sometimes all it takes is one painted line for people to realize just how far they've let someone step. And me? I'm just the guy who flipped a switch and reminded them where the real power lies.